On agriculture and agri-food. We're continuing the study on business risk management program. I would like to first of all thank my colleague John Barlow for presiding, taking the chair the last meeting. I heard it went quite well, so thank you, John, for doing that. And I shall now call the meeting to order. I'm going to go over some of the rules to follow quickly. So interpretation in this video conference will work very much like in a regular committee meeting. You have the choice at the bottom of your screen of either English or French. When you intervene, please make sure that your language channel is set to the language that you intend to speak, not the floor language. This is very important. It will reduce the number of times we need to stop because the interpretation is inaudible for our participant, and it will also maximize the time we spend exchanging with each other. So we should have a few witnesses here. So I understand you would have understood those guidelines. Can I just get a kind of a nod that you've understood that, or if there's any question to our witnesses? Everything's good? Okay, thank you. And also before speaking, please wait until I recognize you by name. When you're ready to speak, you can click on the microphone and on the microphone icon to activate the mic.
Please be sure that your mic is muted when you are not speaking. We are now ready to begin. I would like to welcome our witnesses for today. For the first hour, we have with us les éleveurs de porc du Québec, Mr. Mario Rodrigue, and also Mr. René Roy, Administrator, as well as
Vice-Président, Agriculture.
Stuart Pearson, Vice President, Agriculture, and Mr. Steve Funk, Director. And we have, I don't know if he's arrived, but from the Southern Sea Limited, we have Mr. Jake Eyre, who is a farmer. So I welcome everyone to the meeting today, and we will begin with our opening presentation, 7 minutes each, and I would invite the éleveurs de porc du Québec to begin. Mr. Rodrigue or Mr. Roy, please go ahead. Thank you very much. Thank you so much, Chair. I'm the one who's going to be making the presentation. The éleveurs, thank you for this opportunity to share our concerns and expectations regarding business risk management programs. My name is René Roy. I'm a hog farmer in the Chaudière-Appalaches region of Quebec, and I am the administrator for the éleveurs. I'm accompanied by Mr. Mario Rodrigue, the general manager of our association. The Éleveurs de Porc du Québec brings together more than 2,700 farmers who own pork businesses, and we are the foundation of an industry that generates more than 31,000 jobs in Quebec, and 70% of whose production is exported. The entire Canadian agriculture and agri-food sector wants to contribute to the recovery of the Canadian economy. In this sense, the hog sector is particularly well positioned to increase its already significant contribution. However, producers must have the resources and tools they need to ensure the sustainability of their businesses and be able to capture this development potential. In this basket of tools, it's important to find risk management programs that are well adapted to the realities and challenges facing the businesses for which they have been put in place. From this perspective, improvements must be made to the business risk management programs offered by Agriculture and Agri-Food Canada. We fully support the position defended by the Canadian Pork Council on the importance of reviewing the parameters of agri-stability in order to reduce the trigger level to 85% and remove the factor that limits the reference margin. In its current form, this program is not fulfilling its role. The result is increased pressure on business liquidity and on the risk management tools that have been developed and offered by some provinces, including Quebec. Deprived of the necessary cash flow, producers must postpone investments that are necessary to preserve their competitiveness and meet societal requirements in terms of animal welfare. improvements must also be made to the agri-recovery framework to make it more adaptable to the specific realities of sectors facing exceptional costs following a disaster. For example, although they have had to deal with costs directly related to COVID, producers will likely not be able to access their share of the $125 million envelope that was announced on May 5th. The reason only costs that would have resulted directly or indirectly from the requirement to euthanize pigs are eligible. The $3.7 million that are generated by Canada's pork exports is a very important asset to the Canadian economy. However, this strong presence in export markets exposes producers and the industry to risks over which they have little control. On the one hand, it is important to remember that the prices paid to producers by U.S. slaughterhouses serve as a reference for determining the selling price of hogs in Quebec. The trade war involving the U.S. and China in 2018 has led to a significant drop in the selling price of hogs in the U.S., directly affecting the price received by Quebec producers. More recently, the pandemic has generated major disruptions. Within a few weeks, the forecast of the average price of hogs sold in Quebec for the year 2020 dropped to nearly $20 per 100 kilograms below the cost of production. This represents a $150 million shortfall for Quebec producers. Now, like the other Canadian provinces, the Quebec government offers business risk management solutions to farm businesses. Quebec hog producers have access to Farm Income Stabilization Insurance, called ASRA. However, producers must assume 1/3 of the compensation paid under ASRA. It is important that Agriculture and Agri-Food Canada offer producers business risk management programs that complement those available in the provinces. The deterioration in the selling price of hogs due to exogenous shocks increases the value of ASRA interventions. As a result, the premiums to be paid by producers are increasing at the same rate and are preventing them from reaching their cost of production. From this perspective, it is important that action be taken to limit the frequency and the value of ASRA interventions. Moreover, the parameters do not make it possible to capture and take into consideration costs that are not in line with the reality observed during the surveys commissioned by the Agriculture Finance. What is the reality in Quebec? The effect of COVID-19 was to temporarily reduce slaughter capacity, thereby forcing producers to postpone the delivery of hogs. The consequences of this postponement on the various coefficients of technical efficiency, such as the decrease in average daily gain and the increase in mortality rate, are therefore not covered by ASRA. Several studies show that ag markets volatility has increased since the early 2000s. Because of new factors that over which individual companies have no control, nor can they be compensated for them. From this perspective, it is imperative to establish an income safety net that provides sufficient, predictable, and competitive support in order to provide a stable basis on which agricultural undertakings can build. They must have access to effective and reliable business risk management programs. These financial tools represent a strategic investment for governments in the economy.
Monsieur le Président, la parole est à vous.
You have the floor, Mr. Chair. Oh, I'm so sorry. I'm sorry for the delay.
Et maintenant, nous allons passer à...
And now we'll move on to MNP. Stuart Pearson and Steve Funk, 7 minutes.
Yes, good morning, and thank you for the opportunity to present to you. In April, MNP provided this committee with a number of recommendations for improvements that can be made to the existing suite of business risk management programs to support Canadian farmers. Our goal then, as it is today, is to suggest to this committee how simple changes to the Agri-Stability Program could support Canadian farmers through COVID-19 and beyond. We are pleased that of our initial recommendations, a number have been adopted already by various BRM administrations across the country. Our hope is that many of these constructive changes remain in place and become permanent features of the program. There is a broad discussion happening across the country related to business risk management programs with diverse opinions as to the right way forward. This discussion is crucial as we work to improve BRM programs to safeguard both our food supply and the economic contribution of Canadian agriculture. Today, we are going to focus on what we feel are two specific improvements that can be made to ensure agri-stability meets its stated goals of equitability across all sectors and to make the program simpler and more predictable, bankable, transparent, responsive, timely, and decision and market neutral. Our presentation today is not exhaustive, nor does it address all the potential improvements to agri-stability. Rather, today we will focus on issues of fairness and equitability in the program. Our first recommendation is to temporarily remove the $3 million cap on payments and consider if a cap is even necessary moving forward. Farm sizes have grown tremendously since the inception of agri-stability, and in our experience, a $3 million cap is not reflective of the reality facing contemporary agriculture operations, and unjustly exposes those operations to additional risk based on an arbitrary threshold. While unfair to any large producer, the cap is a particular problem for certain grain operations, nurseries, and feedlots. While the government may feel that a cap is warranted to address the total cost associated with the program, our preference would be that the program is applied equitably and fairly, regardless of whether someone farms 4,000 acres or 40,000 acres. That risk per acre is the same. Our second key point is to remove the reference margin limit. And to explain the nuance of this, I will ask Steve Funk, MNP's National Leader for Farm Income Programs, to provide his insight.
From the late 1990s to date, some form of margin-based government program like Agri-Stability has been in place. At all times and throughout the various five-year frameworks that have existed, the key principles of simplicity, predictability, bankability, transparency, responsiveness, timeliness, and decision and market neutrality have been the guideposts through which the original design and subsequent changes have been steered. Since 2013 and the beginning of Growing Forward 2, however, the inclusion of the reference margin limit, or RML, within program parameters has been counter to these principles, and the program has never been more complex. Consequently, we are recommending that the RML be abolished immediately. RML applies to individual producers and/or sectors where agri-stability allowable expenses are low in relation to agri-stability allowable income. In theory, where producers have a low cost structure. If the allowable expenses on average are less than 50% of the allowable income, the producer will be limited and have an automatic and arbitrary reduction to their reference margin or support level under agri-stability. Unfortunately, the RML has negatively impacted the effectiveness of agri-stability and the equitability of the program across many agricultural sectors, including cow-calf, organic crops, dairies, apiaries, bee pollinators, maple syrup producers, and cranberry producers, to name a few. For sectors impacted by the RML, the margin drop required to trigger benefits varies between 30 and 51% compared to a standard 30% for sectors not impacted by the RML. This concept is illustrated in our submission, which includes case study examples. This leads producers to face one of three potential scenarios. Firstly, producers not limited and only require the 30% trigger point before agri-stability benefit is activated. Secondly, fully limited producers will need to experience a 51% trigger point before an agri-stability benefit is activated. Or thirdly, producers that are partially limited will require a drop of between 30 and 51% in reference margin, depending on the degree to which they're limited. These RML rules have resulted in a program that is less responsive and fundamentally unfair for many types of farms, and even among farms in the same sector. The CAP agreement, effective for the 2018 program year, put into effect a marginally positive change that increased but did not restore many limited reference margins. The examples I just mentioned are inclusive of this change, meaning prior to 2018, some producers required a drop of even more than 51%. Given that this change was layered upon the ill-understood complexities of the RML, it too is not well understood. Furthermore, the CAP changes to the RML failed to address the issue of distortion of payment trigger points for certain sectors of agriculture. In the end, the systemic inequities and negativity towards the program remain, and national participation in agri-stability has yet to significantly recover. These are precisely the undesirable side effects of the RML, which require its immediate removal from agri-stability program parameters. In the end, there are many opportunities to address the shortcomings and bolster the strength of agri-stability to simply and quickly support Canadian ag producers. MNP's recommendations in our written submission have been focused on fixing the timeliness, inequalities, and complexity of the program. In our opinion, removing the payment cap and removing the RML would make for two significant strides towards this goal. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Funk. And now we'll go to Mr. Jake Eyre. Welcome, Mr. Eyre, and you have up to 7 minutes to do your opening statement. Go ahead.
Thank you, Mercy. My name is Jake Eyre, and I am a young farmer from Minto, Manitoba. Like many Canadians, my family and I immigrated to Canada in 2002 for a chance at a better life. I'm proud to come from a long lineage of farmers that dates back to the 1400s and traverses 2 continents. The Eyres have always been farmers, and agriculture has been the central tenet to our family's culture, heritage, and way of life. Today, we continue the tradition of multi-generational farming with my mother, father, and sister on our 1,900-acre farm and farm retail business. On our farm, we produce and process pedigreed seed crops such as wheat, barley, oats, and soybeans, as well as grow corn, canola, and soybeans as cash crops. We also operate a farm retail business, Southern Seed Limited, which sells pedigreed crops, inoculants, biologicals, fertilizers, and clean seeds with the option of optical sortation. Additionally, I also crop 140 acres in my own name, and I'm actively working on acquiring more land to grow our operation business. We're currently in the midst of succession planning. Both my father and I have taken an active interest in farm policy and have held various leadership roles in addition to serving on boards and producer committees across our province. Today, I am speaking as an individual, and my opinions and thoughts are that of my own. I'd like to thank the Standing Committee for the opportunity to present today, and I'm pleased to see that they're studying business risk management programs and for inviting me to present. Now more than ever, the issue of business risk management is one that is very pertinent to agriculture and agri-food. It's my understanding that we have 5 main business risk management programs offered in our country.
Excuse, Monsieur le Président.
In the essence of time,
est-ce que le témoin pourrait tenir le micro près de sa bouche? L'interprète n'entend pas bien. Merci.
So, the interpreter is having a hard time.
Okay.
Try that.
Is this better? Better?
Give it a try. Yeah, continue and hopefully it'll
Can you? Is this better? Can I get a sign? Yes, no.
It looks good. Give it a try.
Okay. My apologies. My understanding that we have 5 main business risk management programs, and I will quickly touch on each in the essence of time. Agri-Insured. This is the program that I believe has the highest uptake amongst all producers and is structured slightly different province to province. This program is one that has evolved and continues to evolve to react to our ever-changing agriculture environment. There has been an abundance of consultations and changes implemented as a result of active engagement in Manitoba with the body that delivers the program. I do feel that there is room for improvement and updates in addition to alternative models such as field-by-field coverage or gross revenue-based coverage need to be further explored.
Can you pause for a second, Mr. Eyre? Sorry about that again. I don't seem to I don't seem to get the French interpretation. Monsieur Perron, does it work on your end, Monsieur Perron?
Non, on n'avait pas
Non.
non plus, mais je crois qu'il n'y en avait pas du tout, là. C'est peut-être.
Non, j'ai remarqué.
Can we just suspend to ensure that we do have simultaneous interpretation? We will suspend and then settle this issue with Mr. Eyre. Yes, we'll try to do that.
Just work with Mr. Eyre to make sure we have the good sound. Go ahead. continue.
Thank you, Mercy. Okay. Agri-risk initiatives, or apologies. Agri-invest. In the past, groups have called for an increase in matchable deposits to 3% and to allow up to 2% additional non-matchable tax deductible contributions. I believe this could be a positive change that benefits a variety of producers if implemented. Agri-risk initiatives. This initiative isn't directly applicable to my farm, but after researching the program, I am pleased to learn that the initiative has been taken to invest and explore in the development of new risk management tools. After 2019, I feel that agri-recovery and agri-stability need some serious updates and redesign. I wanted to take the opportunity to talk about the harvest of 2019 and how it helped shape my views on agri-recovery and agri-stability. 2019 growing season on our farm was fantastic up until September. Torrential downpours followed by cool, wet weather delayed and dragged out our harvest. On our farm, we are typically finished all of our cereals by mid to end of September and our canola shortly thereafter. This was not the case in 2019. Historically, we harvest together with a neighboring farm of the same size and share resources such as labor, equipment, and storage. This is done to increase efficiency on both our operations and ensure harvest is finished as quickly and effectively as possible. Even with additional labor and resources, we are extremely behind schedule come the weekend of October 11th. What happened that weekend was felt by many farmers in Manitoba and across the Canadian prairies. A severe winter storm hit, bringing freezing rain, sleet, and upwards of 2 feet of snow across the prairies on my family's farm. After this storm, a state of emergency was declared in the province of Manitoba to help with cleanup and restoration of power. Before the storm hit, my family, as well as many other farm families in the area, were struggling with an abundance of crop left out in the fields. Receiving upwards of 2 feet of snow, sleet, and rain made this the harvest from hell that much harder. Farmers are known for their resiliency and willingness to get the job done. In the end, we did just that. However, it was not without unplanned costs or consequences. Bushels of crop were left on the ground or in the fields. Due to wet weather, soybeans shelled out, and we were unable to harvest the pods lowest to the ground over our whole farm. Subsequently, we purchased additional aeration fans, rented and installed tracks on our combine, utilized a natural gas dryer, dried tough grain, spent hours fixing and troubleshooting problems on our machines, used heaters and propane torches to dry out and unthaw our equipment, and also rented an additional combine to help finish. Preliminary estimates by my father and I have approximated this cost at $30 per acre, or close to $90,000. These costs will continue to be felt as we are seeing the events of 2019 carry on to 2020. Extra tillage was needed this spring to fill in ruts left by last year's harvest, as well to work crop left in the field. Acres of land was rendered unseedable and became incapable of being traveled on. Extra turning and overlap of seed, fertilizer, and crop protection will see these costs carried to 2020. With the kindness of neighbors, we are able to harvest most of our crop. However, this is not the case for many. In my opinion, moving forward, our BRM programs need to speak to and account for all types of farming operations and not paint us all with the same brush. This can be achieved by having genuine and transparent conversation with competition and producer groups Canada-wide. BRM programming is something that needs to be easily communicated. I myself struggle to wrap my head around the programming some of the time and see that as a major issue. How do we expect farmers in the next generation, such as myself, to enroll in these programs if they don't understand them? In Minister Bibeau's mandate letter, it states that she helped producers manage environmental and business risks by providing faster and better adapted support. I cannot stress the importance enough and the timeliness of this. We will survive 2019, but real and proactive changes need to be implemented. Agriculture is my passion and I love what I do. It's my dream to farm and to continue to provide safe and nutritious food for Canada and the world alike. Food security is something that I wish our country continues to have now and in the future. Agriculture's potential to contribute and grow our economy is exponential and it excites me. I worry that if we do not act and implement changes to our business risk management suite, agriculture will not reach its potential, and the next generation, such as myself.
Thank you, Mr. Ayer. Thank you very much for your statement, Mr. Ayer. And now we'll go to our question round, and we'll start with Mr. Barlow for up to 6 minutes. Go ahead, Mr. Barlow.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. And I'm going to share my time with my colleague, Mr. Thank you very much to all the witnesses who have appeared here today. And wanted to just comment on Jake's presentation specifically. It's Mr. Ayer, is interesting that you did make the statement that one of the issues with the business risk management is we're trying to do a one-size-fits-all type program where you are quite clear that, and we'll hear from the cattlemen later on today, that these business risk management programs do not work for all types of farms. So that I think the pressure is on us to come up with some programs that are flexible to various different commodities. So I found that quite interesting in your comment. I wanted to start with MNP. And I apologize, I can't remember if it was you, Stuart, or Mr. Funk, who had mentioned about an arbitrary threshold is what your comment was there. And I found it interesting that we've had many producers and associations have been proposing a trigger point be raised from 70 to 85% or beyond. However, neither one of you mentioned that in your presentation. I'm just wondering why, and what is your thoughts on this discussion around that 70 to 85%? It seems to be, I think why that came to me, as you said, that's an arbitrary threshold. That's sort of the only two numbers that people have discussed, and I just want your thoughts on that.
In our opinion, an increase in the trigger point would help all farmers and increase the effectiveness of the program. But we can appreciate that it's a significant funding decision. And so we would recommend that producers and government discuss and agree on the trigger point together. But to be cautious, because if the RML, the reference margin limit, is not removed, the desired impact is not going to be fully achieved. There's still going to be inequities between various ag sectors.
Thank you. And you didn't touch a lot on, to MNP as well, on Agri-Invest. And we've had a lot of commodity groups over the last few meetings talk about the benefits of Agri-Invest. That is a much more useful program than Agri-Stability, something that's a bit more dependable. Any opinion on Agri-Invest as maybe a better option for us to strengthen or expand compared to Agri-Stability?
Yeah, I'll take that one, Steve. Thanks, John, for the question. Yeah, I mean, Agri-Invest does put money into producers' hands on a regular basis and more quickly, and could be used as a savings account for when situations like this happen. In order to make it more effective, though, you would need to raise the amounts paid. So 1% it takes a long time to build up a sizable account that's going to have any sort of significant impact on the operation. So I would recommend that you take a look at raising those amounts if you want it to be more effective for producers.
And Scott, is that Stuart? Is that reversing the changes from 2018 when they were reduced? Is that, or going further, like that 5% number has been tossed around?
Yeah, well, you would have to go back a number of years to get back to 5%. But yeah, more recently we've been moved down to 1%, and 1% takes a long time to build up an account, even in the matching of it. You get 2% a year, right? So we need, if we're looking at Agri-Invest to cover the shortfalls of what Agri-Stability is not covering, we need to get up to right now 30% of the shortfall, and it would take many, many years to get to that level for a producer at this point if they were just starting out or they didn't have any money in that account.
Thank you. I'll pass the rest of my time over to Mr. Lehoux. Merci beaucoup.
Oui, merci.
Thank you, John, and thank you to all our witnesses for your contributions this morning. My question is to the éleveurs de porc de Québec. Mr. Roy, you spoke very quickly about agri-equivalence that lacks stability, agri-recovery, rather. What should be changed in agri-recovery? Maybe my colleague could answer this question. Thank you, and good morning to everyone here. The problem that we see with agri-recovery is that this program is the framework for the announcements that were made earlier this spring. As Mr. Roy has said, it's intended to deal with costs that are related to the euthanasia of hogs. for example, and we had no option but to go ahead with that. But the problem is this for the éleveurs. We had the culling of the hogs had to be postponed, but there is a coefficient of effectiveness that has to be taken into account. The hogs live longer, and it can lead to deterioration in terms of their health, and that can give a rise to the rate of mortality. Therefore, the raising hogs rather to maturity with young hogs in the same structure, in the same type of structure is very important. That has to be taken into consideration. Thank you, Mr. Rodrigue.
Monsieur le Président.
I understand. Is my time over? I finished? Yeah, finished? Yes, that's right. You're out. Is it my turn now, Mr. Chair? Yes, it is your turn now. Well, we can take Francis's time if he doesn't need it. Thank you very much indeed. I'm going to ask my first question to Mr. Roy or Mr. Rodrigue. In this agri-recovery program, you talked about the way in which the program would only cover the cost of euthanasia. Is that right? That's the information we have. Yes, only that. And Mr. Rodrigue spoke about this. That is, that this problem in Quebec is taken care of in a sense. So there is no need for the euthanasia. Yes, we have been able to reduce the number of hogs, and so the need for euthanasia is lessened in Quebec, but maybe not elsewhere in Canada. And others have to deal with euthanasia even this week. Inaudible. To your mind, and Mr. Ayers spoke about this, about the regional problems that we see here in Canada, and the federal government bears part of that responsibility, but so do the provinces. So then maybe they are better placed to determine what the regional needs are, if you allow me to say so, because the provinces are the ones that are out there closest to the farmers. How do you think when I see that agri-recovery cannot necessarily fulfill everything for everyone, that might not be your case, do you have in mind what could be done? You don't necessarily have that problem with euthanasia right now in Quebec, but elsewhere in Canada they certainly do. What can be done? If there were more eligible costs, maybe that could help. What was said earlier is this. The issue is that the costs that have been incurred by the producers by having to keep the hogs for a longer period of time, but they focused on euthanasia, but they had to buy what they needed to be able to bury them and so on. There were additional costs. So it's not just a limit. It's not a matter of tying the money to euthanasia itself, but there are other extraordinary costs that were triggered by the provincial program. Thank you.
To English. Mr. Pearson, just you've mentioned the reference cap or eliminating the cap, the $3 million cap, and bringing back the reference margin to 85%. And I know I actually read your submission that you've provided to this committee a few months ago, and in that same where you've talked about the RML and you've talked about the cap, but in that same same document, you've also mentioned that it was your understanding that the rationale for the government towards changing the Agri-Stability Program was because of potential pressures. I think you quoted an OECD report about whether or not those programs were trade compliance and whether or not they were sort of subsidizing profitability as opposed to potential loss. So if we were to eliminate the $3 million cap and bring the reference margin back to 85%, in your experience and with your consultations, do you know if that would be trade compliant, or would there be a potential of other countries potentially bringing Canada to WTO or pick your body?
Yeah, thank you. Just to clarify, we do want to remove the cap. And we want to remove the reference margin limiting. We haven't made a comment on going to 85% on the trigger, but we're not against that. If that's what industry and government decide, that's great for producers. The concern, I guess, and this is not clear to us, we've heard conflicting reports is from government and from industry, is that what are the rules around trade, and if you hit certain funding levels in your programs, are you violating WTO rules? I think that's one thing that needs to be worked out between producers and government when they're thinking about the trigger point, moving from 70 to 85%. Are we in violation of any world trade rules? And what would the ramifications be both to agriculture and other industries if we are in violation? But again, we're not experts in that field. You would need to speak to a law firm or to your own government representatives to properly answer that. But it should be addressed.
Okay, and one of the issues, and I've heard often with farmers, is the complexity of applying to agri-stability. And I'm just wondering if you have any advice on trying to simplify that particular program. And I'm assuming one of them would be the admissibility of costs, and certain costs are admissible and certain other costs are not admissible. Do you have any comments on that, or?
Yeah, I mean the administrations over the past number of years have made changes to make it easier for producers to apply. They are requesting less information than they did historically when the program was first brought out. That was beneficial in some cases for producers to have to provide less info, but maybe it also contributed to more of the confusion around the program, I think.
Thank you, Mr. Pearson. Unfortunately, that's all the time we have.
Thank you.
Monsieur Perron, allez-y pour 6 minutes.
You have the floor for 6 minutes, Mr. Perron. Well, thank you so much, Chair. I will continue with Mr. Pearson to just follow on the line of questioning that my colleague brought up. With respect to agri-stability, you said, Mr. Pearson, that there were certain things that you would not be discussing, that you would not be bringing up today in your proposal.
Oui, exact.
What would your question be? And are you looking for a list of those things?
Qu'est-ce que vous, en fait?
Well, yes. I would like to know exactly what you're suggesting, because most of the witnesses have told you here they're quasi-unanimous, 85%, and the elimination of the reference margin. We could probably still talk about it, but it's been well established. But you said apparently that you had other proposals to make. I would really like to hear them, and it could benefit all the members of the committee.
Sure. So there's a number of points noted in our submission that was provided back in April. I think there's about 15 items in total that were noted on there. And those are the items that we feel would be extremely beneficial if all of them were looked into and followed through. Some of them are administrative, some of them are program related. Again, as we mentioned, we don't feel we can weigh in on where the trigger point should be, so we're not going to address that one. We will let producers deal with government on that and find a reasonable position on that. And beyond that, I think one of the key things I would point out that it maybe is not in our submission is that we do have We do have some issues where we have prolonged weather disasters or prolonged negative impacts on farms for, say, 3 to 4 or maybe even 5 years in a row. And in the existing agri-stability framework, that becomes problematic because reference margins become depleted, and therefore insurance coverage is depleted significantly and insufficient. So, that would be one area that needs to be reviewed in the long run when looking at agri-stability.
Je vous remercie beaucoup.
Thank you very much. I would like to go to the pork producers, Mr. Rodrigue and Roy. You spoke about the need for complementary BRM programs that would, on top of agri-stability at 85% and eliminating reference margins. What would you see as an extra supplementary program, maybe an emergency fund like what the Canadian Federation of Agriculture had asked for? Would that help on a timely basis once in a while? What is certain is that when there's exogenous shocks like trade wars, our program is not conceived properly. Would it be possible for the witness to bring his microphone closer to his mouth? It is very hard to hear his answers. We need to be able to help farmers where there's commercial shocks that are outside of the marketplace. So that would be appropriate assistance. I don't know if you have anything to add. No. Yes, it answers my question. Maybe you could see the help that is brought to the American farmers compared to what's happening in Canada. How does that handicap you for the future and what things happen? Once again, this witness is too hard to hear. He needs to bring his microphone closer to his mouth. It is impossible to interpret.
Excusez, juste une seconde là. OK. Est-ce que vous pouvez mettre votre micro?
Monsieur Roy, could you please bring your microphone to your mouth because the interpreters cannot hear you? Yes. I hope that this is a bit better. We will try. So, what I was saying was that on what's happening in trade, we're wondering if 85 will be enough, but there's money going directly to American farmers and they're in direct competition with us. They're our main competitors. So for us, this is unfair competition and it's based on the same market as the Americans. So we're at a disadvantage and it weakens our competitive situation worldwide for the same markets. So what's the solution to that? Is it fight fire with fire and give you the same type of money? What can we do? There's various tools. We can't replace the government, but then when initiatives are taken, like for coal, there were actions that were undertaken to prevent them in the future. So that's one of the options, but that's one of the options. Otherwise, we have to find ways to try to keep the same competitive capacity as our closest competitors. And we're looking into the BRM programs. But if you think about the problems we had with pigs, do you think that current programs are protecting you against contamination for such problems? Rodrigue, please. Mr. Rodrigue is very far from his microphone. Could somebody please ask him to get closer?
Point of
order, Mr. Chair.
Go ahead.
Sir, the interpreter is having trouble hearing. I was wondering if you could speak a little closer to the microphone. Merci.
Oui, d'accord.
Yes, thank you. Is this better? Is this better? Yes, very quickly, because we don't have much time. For sanitary measures in Quebec, for example, we're talking about the APP as a problem that is possible, but for Quebec and other provinces, there's several diseases, And despite the efforts that are implemented periodically, there are productions that are faced with this type of disease. Thank you, Mr. Rodrigue. We have to go to the next witness. Next question.
Go ahead, Mr. McGregor. Mr. McGregor.
Great. Thank you very much, Chair, and thank you to all of our witnesses for contributing to our study today. Monsieur Roy, maybe I will continue with you and agri-recovery. We have had a lot of discussion during this study, but also our COVID-19 study on how the business risk management programs have performed during this pandemic. And so when you look at agri-recovery and the $125 million that was funneled through that program, I want to know, for when maybe the next pandemic hits, or if there's a disease that it comes with an outbreak in Canada's swine herds, anything, I want to know what specific areas we can improve this program. So when you look at how agri-recovery performed during this pandemic and the money that you received to stabilize herds, sometimes to euthanize, I mean, how much of a loss were you getting per pig? I think those kind of figures would be really helpful, because I don't think the costs in raising the pig, the amount of feed you had to do, can you just maybe drill down on some of those finer details for the committee?
Je vais demander une précision ici.
I will have to ask for more precision. You want to know the current losses?
No, like with how agri-recovery performed during this pandemic, you got money to help stabilize your herds, to in some cases euthanize, but how much money were you also losing that the program did not address? Because agri-recovery has got the word recovery in it. It should help you recover from the disaster.
Well, to tell you, I think that currently the program should be renamed, because it's not recovery. It does not help production to be recovered. It closes it, because currently the assistance is brought for euthanasia. What producer could keep going if he or she does not get income from his crops, his production, and be compensated to bury this production? It's unfortunate, but it cannot work. For the program to be able to work, it would need to help farmers in their extraordinary expenses, which are linked to production and not only to dispose of. It's like, since this year there's grain, there's cereal that can't be exported, it will have to be buried. It's an aberration. There has to be a way to help farmers, help producers to go through the crisis so that they are able to recover, not to shut down and close off that production.
Very much for that. For my next question, I'll turn to Myers Norris Penny. We've heard a lot over the last number of years about how farm debt has significantly increased over the last 20 years. You might look at sort of the gross sales of farms in general in Canada and see that they're doing quite well and they're increasing, but farmers also have a lot of costs, and the amount that they're left with at the end of the year can fluctuate wildly. If we do not improve these BRM programs significantly, and if you look at all the risk that's apparent in the agricultural market, I mean, are we going to see a link between not improving BRM programs and an increase in farm debt and more farms going under? I think it'd be helpful to hear your thoughts on that.
Thank you for the question. I would suggest that would be a fair statement. We're seeing debt levels rise to unprecedented levels. We're also seeing cost of production in various sectors increase, and in some cases outpace the rising revenues. And so we're seeing a shrinking margin, which increases the risk significantly, which makes programs like agri-stability and other business risk management programs more critical than they've ever been. We will see producers go out of business if these safeguards are not in place. Some sectors have other options like private insurance, but many sectors do not. And so we need to look at protecting those sectors with any means possible.
Great. Okay. Thank you for that contribution. And then, Mr. Eyre, I'll turn to you for my last question. I think it'd be helpful just in the time I have remaining, if you could just maybe detail like your personal circumstances, maybe go into a bit more detail on how after that harvest from hell, you know, what was your personal experience like with agri-recovery and agri-stability? You know, I think these specific examples help us in when we're going to produce our report and issue our recommendations.
Oh, thank you for the question, Mr. McGregor. No, my personal experience with agri-stability and agri-recovery after 2019, we met with our accountant, to go over our year end, and after looking at both programs, we were not in a claim position. And in my submission, I tried to emphasize that, which I apologize for the delay with the internet connection and whatnot, tried to emphasize that after all these accrued costs that were unexpected, if these two programs did not trigger, there needed to be some serious revisions to the program. So that was what I was trying to emphasize, was that after this, the harvest from hell, all these accrued costs, if they did not account for that, there definitely needs to be some work done there.
Thank you. I wanted to give you the opportunity to really underline those two key points. So thank you for repeating that.
Thank you, Mr. McGregor, and thank you, Mr. Eyre. And I want to thank all our witnesses. This is all the time we have for our first hour panel. Les éleveurs. Go ahead, Mr. Marlowe.
Yeah, thank you. We didn't have time for a second round, so I'm just wondering, can I ask MNP to submit their assessment of the online calculator for agri-stability, which was put forward to help expedite the agri-stability program? I would just be curious on MNP's assessment of how the online calculators work. If they could submit that to the committee.
Is that possible, Mr. Pearson? That you could submit that?
Yeah, we will get in touch and try to submit that, yes.
Okay, and we'll distribute it to our committee members. Thank you, Mr. Barlow. Thank you, Mr. Pearson. So, thank you. Merci les éleveurs du port du Québec, Monsieur Rodrigue.
Thank you, Mr. Rodrigue, Monsieur Roy, pork producers, MNLP.
Also, Mr. Funk. And from Southern Seed Limited, thank you, Mr. Eyre, and apology for the sound, but thanks for being here. So we'll break for 5 minutes. So we'll suspend the meeting for 5 minutes to get the next panel on. Thank you, and we have back in 5. Thank you. for our second hour from the Canadian Cattlemen Association, Mr. Brady Stadnitsky, Manager, Policy and Program, and also Mr. Charlie Christie, Chair, Domestic Agriculture Policy and Regulation Committee. From the Quebec Produce Growers Association, Mr. Sylvain Thérault, Président, excusez, et Mr. Jocelyn Saint-Denis, Director General, and as an individual, Mr. Justin Jenner, Beef and Grain Producer. So welcome to all of you to our committee, and we'll start with opening statements, 7 minutes max, and from the Canadian Cattlemen Association, you have 7 minutes between the two representatives. Go ahead. So from the Canadian Cattlemen Association?
Oh, sorry, I was muted. They muted me. I didn't realize it. Thank you for the invitation to speak with you today. My name is Charlie Christie. My family and I run a cow-calf and feedlot operation near Trochu, Alberta. I'm currently a director with CCA and co-chair the Domestic Ag Committee. As he said, I'm here with Brady Stadnicki, who is staff of CCA based out of Calgary. A robust suite of business risk management programs is key for the economic sustainability and competitiveness of the Canadian beef sector. CCA believes that there is a need for sufficiently funded national agricultural risk management programs that are delivered consistently across all jurisdictions without creating an imbalance between agriculture sectors or regions. Programs should minimize the risk-adverse impacts on trade, distortion of market signals, and influence on business decisions. CCA also supports some flexibility in government regional and or provincial livestock insurance programs such as the RMP and the ASRA program, assuming that overall level of support is even across the country and programs are market neutral. Since 2018, federal, provincial, and territorial governments have been conducting a BRM review. One key area of focus under the review program is equity among sectors and regions, and CCA believes aspects of BRM programs ranging from program spending, design, or availability provides inequitable coverage among agricultural sectors or regions at this time. We are keen to work with government to quickly address these equity challenges and are implementing the following program-specific recommendations. CCA strongly recommends a number of changes to the agri-stability to improve program equitability and effectiveness to the beef cattle sector. This includes removal of the reference margin limit, payment caps, and enhancing the trigger to 85% of the reference margin. I would like to place additional emphasis on the reference margin limit. Operations that have reference margin limiting applied require extensive, if not devastating drop in their program year revenue in order to trigger benefits. This significantly decreases the value of agri-stability to many producers, especially those with low-cost structures such as cow-calf producers who typically produce their own feed and have minimal eligible labor expenses. The removal of the risk margin limit or reference margin limit will make the program predictable, bankable, and ultimately more equitable for Canadian cattle producers, especially the cow-calf sector. Another program we'd like to focus on is the Western. Sorry,
Mr. Christie, could you just move your paper a little bit more?
Sorry, I didn't realize.
Yeah, we want to see your.
Okay. Another
ahead,
program we'd like to focus on is the Western Livestock Price Insurance Program, or the WLPIP. This is a forward market-based insurance style program that allows producers to manage risk, within their own operation. CCA's position is that the tool should become a permanent risk management tool, not dependent on renewal under each agricultural policy framework. We know that youth in the cattle industry benefit greatly from the utilization of this program. The ability to ensure a floor price on cattle has supported young producers to secure financing for their beef operations. Furthermore, they are typically highly leveraged and don't have equity to fall back on in a downturn in the market. This underscores the importance of managed price risk with a timely bankable program, which livestock price insurance provides. Currently in maritime Canada, they still operate without a program that manages price risk in a timely fashion. the Maritime Beef Council, covering New Brunswick, Nova Scotia, and Prince Edward Island, has a strategy to expand cattle inventories and beef production. Having access to an insurance program is key to achieving their objectives. Canadian and maritime beef producers are eager to see the creation of an Eastern Settlement Index pilot under WLPIP, which would contribute to the national price insurance coverage across Canada. CCA believes the Eastern Settlement Index should receive federal backstopping and administrative cost support as provided under the WLPIP. Improved hay and forage insurance across the country is also needed. Forage insurance products are often distinct from annual crops in that coverage and settlements are based rather on production, are based on they're based on areas rather than the actual production on an individual farm. The lack of individual farm insurance coverage for forages may act as a deterrent to the participation and represent a source of inequity between perennial and annual crops. Pasture and forage insurance programs should also be equipped with a mechanism that helps producers account for increased feed prices during these times. Lastly, I'd like to talk about improving the livestock tax deferral provision. Extreme weather challenges such as drought, flooding, fires can all impact a producer's ability to maintain or sustain their herd. These events often force producers to sell animals such as calves or breeding stock earlier than anticipated, resulting in more than one sale per fiscal year. While the livestock tax deferral tool is available to producers, uptake is low and significant herd reduction must take place before the program provides benefit. Delays or regions deemed ineligible for Finance Canada in determining when income deferral can be applied to drought situations has made a mechanism not always useful for management decisions. CCA believes that amendments to the deferral are needed to make the tool more functional, including the option to self-elect when the tool can be utilized, ensuring that all classes of cattle are eligible under the deferral. With significant volatility due to the world markets due to COVID, along with typical risks ranging from weather, production, market access, a well-defined, designed, and sufficiently funded business risk management tools have never been more critical for the cattle producers. With these tools in place, the Canadian beef industry is well positioned to keep growing the economy and support a strong rural communities and conservation outcomes from the agricultural landscape. We look forward to answering your questions.
Thank you, Mr. Christie. And now from Quebec Produce Grower Association, Mr. Sylvain Thérault ou Mr. Josselin, jusqu'à 6 minutes.
So from the
Mr. Perron? Mr. Saint-Denis? Mr. Thérault? I didn't hear anything. I'm sorry. The Association of Produce Growers of Quebec is a voluntary association of Quebec's main vegetable and horticultural producers. The association is a significant force since nearly 80% of Quebec's vegetable and fruit production comes from its members. In 2018, Quebec's fruit and vegetable production sector generated just over $1 billion in farm gate receipts. From 2008 to 2017, growth in Quebec's edible horticultural production was nearly 1.4 times higher than that of agriculture as a whole. The economic contribution of the entire sector, including retailers, is not negligible. Its contribution to Quebec's GDP represents $4.1 billion, and overall, the sector generates some 62,000 jobs. Our sector has different characteristics from other agricultural sectors. Intensive use of labor. It is labor intense, but with limited capacity for additional mechanization in the short term. Fragile crops combined with high value per hectare, which increases the financial risks in case of damage due to climate or pests. Highly diversified production in terms of number and variety of products. Businesses of all size, mostly small farms, occupy the entire territory. These businessmen and women are fruit and vegetable producers, and they are an essential service in our population. Our businesses have to deal with many production-related risks over which we have no control, and which makes financial stability very difficult. Risks related to the unstable and unpredictable climate, pest risks, which are numerous and increasingly new to climate change, a workforce that comes from elsewhere. There is also the business environment, which brings its own share of the risks. Strong competition from imports, which very often come from countries that do not have the same rules of the game as we do, be it in terms of labor, regulations, or other things. Canada's increasingly cumbersome regulatory environment, which meets the demands of citizens, but which imposes additional costs that consumers are not prepared to assume. And non-tariff barriers to imports in some countries, including in negotiated trade agreements. And finally, a tense political climate that from one day to the next can change the market. To be able to deal with these many production and business risks, producers need a suite of business risk management programs that really is up to the task. Currently, business people are being asked to seed, plant, feed the population, and to assume a large part of the risk. This year, in the context of the pandemic, fruit and vegetable growers have repeatedly asked the Canadian government for clear support and the announcement of adjustments to business risk management programs for the current growing season, at a time when growers have to decide what to do. But to date, nothing. We are left to our own devices. We have been told to use existing programs and join Agri-Stability, while recognizing that the program is not adequate and up to the task. Vegetable and fruit producers who have decided to answer the call to feed Canada have put the financial security of their businesses and their families' assets at risk. This is simply not acceptable. The number one program, Agri-Stability, no longer meets the needs since the major cuts in 2013. The proof is that only 31% of producers subscribe to it, even though the need for business risk management mechanisms has never been greater. Despite the fact that all stakeholders, both the government and the producers, agree on this point, nothing is being done to improve it. And in the meantime, producers are bearing the brunt of the risk. Although in Quebec we have Agri-Québec Plus, it is very limited in terms of the insurable amount and does not compensate for the weaknesses of Agri-Stability. The agri-insurance crop insurance program is not accessible for all crops and moreover is not the same across Canada since it is managed by each province. For example, in Quebec, we have the notion of normal loss, which is not found in other provinces, and which penalizes producers. Another example, on May 12th, Ottawa asked the provinces to include labor shortages as an eligible risk for the horticultural industry. To date, no province has responded to the call, preferring to rely on Agri-Stability. Mr. Thériault, could you put hold your mic like that. That would help. Yeah, we are being told to use the funds in the agri-investment accounts, even though these funds are part of the company's equity. These funds are used for investments in growth, for equipment, renewal, and to adapt to various regulations. That really is the bottom line for our producers. Wall-to-wall programs do not adequately address all sectors of agriculture, and it would be essential that the needs of each farm be taken into account in this program design, regardless of the size or type of business. The fruit and vegetable production sector is an essential service in feeding Canadians. Producers must both keep their selling price at levels that allow Canadian consumers to eat fresh vegetables and fruit, and at the same time bear ever-increasing production costs. All of this in a context where financial risks are not adequately covered. I will ask Mr. Saint-Denis to speak to our recommendations. Here are some recommendations with respect to agri-stability. These are the changes that would have the greatest impact on fruit and vegetable producers. We would ask that the parameters of the program be brought back to the level that they were at before the 2013 cuts. That is the coverage rate of the reference margin brought back to 85% and the payment of the loss of the covered margin to 85%. In addition, the elimination of caps on margins and amounts paid so that larger companies have the same coverage as smaller ones. Agri-investment, oh, thank you, sir, but the time has run out. I'm so sorry. It will not be...
Mr. Jenner, you're up for 7 minutes. Go ahead.
Okay. Hello, and thank you for inviting me to participate in the committee meeting today. I will be making my remarks in English. My name is Justin Jenner, and I am a third-generation farmer in Western Manitoba, located north of the city of Brandon. I have been farming since I graduated from university in 2002, and will call myself a young farmer today as I won't have many more opportunities to do so. I have been involved in farm policy for many years, mostly with Keystone Agricultural Producers, the main farm lobby organization in Manitoba. I am the former vice president and chair of the Young Farmers Committee, and currently sit on the board and chair the Business Risk Management Committee. In my time serving with CAP, I have seen many instances where current BRM programming is not adequate or not serving its intended purpose. My parents are still involved in the farm, and I've learned many valuable lessons from them, the most important of which is to pay close attention to the economics of the farm and find ways to reduce risk. We have an integrated farm with cash crops, forages, and beef cattle. We have felt that by having multiple enterprises on the farm, we would be better able to mitigate the risk of disasters on the farm. I have seen through the years that when one commodity is not profitable, that another will be, and the farm can continue. We were able to weather the storm during BSE and continue operating in the face of severe weather and depressed prices in crops. Growing our own feed for our cattle, for instance, has stabilized our feed costs and ensured our feed supply. We are strong believers in risk mitigation and feel that the agri-insurance program is the best tool that we have to control risk in the crops that we grow. Insurance is a large cost on our farm, but it is important. The program, as it is administered in Manitoba, is not perfect, but is willing to change and adapt to new systems. It is sometimes more difficult to get producers to subscribe to new and different programs. However, our farm's integrated approach has led to a problem with other BRM programs, particularly agri-stability. We would be far better off to buy all of our feed from a third party, even at high prices, in order to increase the line item for expenses. This is where the reference margin limit is discouraging farms like ours from making investments in self-risk mitigation. Ignoring the risk mitigation that we have undertaken leads us to being at a competitive disadvantage to operations who specialize and have wild swings in income and costs, who are more likely to trigger a payment in bad years and have very high profits in good years. Agri-Invest has also been a popular program, and we have used it. It is appreciated due to its simplicity and transparency. However, in talks with government, I have often heard that farmers...
M'excuse, Monsieur le Président, parce que l'interprète n'entend pas.
Alors, can you bring your mic closer?
I apologize. Is that better?
Give it a try. Yeah, good. Go ahead.
Okay. Agri-Invest has also been a popular program, and we have used it. It is appreciated due to its simplicity and transparency. However, in talks with government, I have often heard that farmers don't need more BRM programming due to a large amount of money sitting in Agri-Invest accounts. This is akin to making arguments that cutting social programs due to Canadians having money in our RSP accounts. Just because some people have money in an account doesn't mean that it is in the hands of those who need it. Saving money for bad times should not be discouraged, and it will be used when it is needed. It is also common in government decision-making that when budgeted money is not used, it is redirected somewhere else in the future. And a use it or lose it type of budgeting does not work for disaster assistance programs. Reducing coverage in good times leads to inadequate coverage when it is needed. Risk management programs should be used to mitigate the risks in the agricultural industry that are out of control of the industry itself. Weather is a big driver of profitability on the farm, but trade disputes has also proven to be major influences in profitability in recent years. Some of the current programs do not adequately address particularly trade disputes. So thank you for your time and interest on this today.
Thank you very much, Mr. Jenner. And now we'll go to the question portion of our panel. And Mr. Sirocco, up to 6 minutes. Go ahead, Mr. Sirocco.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and I'll be splitting my time with Ms. Rood. Thank you to the presenters today. Mr. Christie, seeing as though you're a feedlot operator as well as cow-calf, with the agri-recovery, has this actually helped much mitigate any losses, or has it just been a small token assistance? It's definitely going to be an assistance, I would say. Brady can elaborate a little bit, but the only agri-recovery that we've seen has been on the set-aside programs. We're working very closely with government to try and stretch those as far as they will go. I would say they will be, in my opinion, they'll be a drop in the bucket of a pretty big problem for the backed up cattle that we have. Brady, do you want to add?
Yeah, thanks, Charlie. I can add to that. So, yeah, just even providing some context. We're still at about 130,000 head of backed up cattle as of the last week ending of June 13th, and feedlots have incurred additional costs of around $3.6 million to that week, and kind of ranged anywhere from $605 per head losses kind of earlier on in the pandemic, and that's lowered a little bit here as we've progressed to about just over $200 per head. But certainly with the agri-recovery funding and the set aside that's looking to be in place in Alberta and Saskatchewan and Ontario, I think it's going to be there will be some really good usefulness for it as we get into larger supplies coming into ready for market in that July to September timeframe. So being able to manage the supply with the demand of cattle using that program will provide some help.
Okay. Now, Mr. Christie, on the agri-stability, you also said that you brought forward changes. Would this make it more equitable based on the farm size and the structure as well? Would this help in that regards? Yes, that's actually specifically where it will help, is certain farm structures that to do the accounting and the application to agri-stability, the cost is onerous, plus the job itself is onerous. So a lot of the smaller farms, or even the just specifically cow-calf operations, don't apply for it because they don't see the benefit down the road. So this would make the triggers would happen much sooner, and would happen, there'd be different parameters around it, so it would definitely be more equitable for those types of farms. Okay, and I'm glad to see that you also want to do the livestock price insurance right across Canada. That's going to make a big assistance on a lot of producers, that's for sure. Do you see any problems, though, how it's based on the market value of the fluctuations, how sometimes you're paying only $7 and then it can go up to $50 per calf? Is that going to be an issue? How to address that? Well, I'm a firm believer in the WL pit myself. I use it every year, whether it's a good year or a bad year. Right now the premiums are indeed high, and that's based on the volatility. And I don't know how you get around that. If you could mitigate that volatility somehow by maybe perhaps a little more backstop from the government to take some of the risk out of it for the underwriters. But I understand that volatility equation needs to be in the system just to cover the program, so that the program itself can continue running. Okay, well, thank you, Mr. Christie, then. I'll pass on to Ms. Rood then.
Thank you. Mr. Taro, you had mentioned that in fruit and vegetable production in Quebec, there's a lot of small family farms with diverse crops, and some of these programs, they're not a one size fits all, especially in this sector. You also mentioned we're going to have strong import competition. So our food production is an essential service, and we've talked a lot about food security here. So I'm just wondering, in your province, do you foresee, with this pandemic, with labor shortages, with these programs not working this year, do you foresee there being a lot of bankruptcies or family businesses losing their farms? And if so, how is this going to impact our food security here in Canada, not just for now, but in years to come, and even touching on having to rely on imports?
He's muted.
Mute your microphone first.
I spoke a lot earlier. I'll let my DG speak to that question. Thank you for your question, Madam Rude. Indeed, this season is very difficult, and it requires a lot from small businesses, bigger businesses, family businesses, because in many of the programs that exist, assistance is more important for small farms, for small businesses, but also bigger businesses are producing a bigger percentage of what people are consuming. And those businesses are great engines for our current economy. So they have to be remembered. Small or big, whatever the size. Will there be bankruptcies? There's a lot of producers who took the risk to say, I am going to produce, like Mr. Thérault said. We asked the Quebec government and the federal government to tell us in advance if there will be adjustments to program. We were told, yes, go ahead. We will support any losses related to COVID-19. We know that the current sector is having challenges with its labor force. We're still missing 3,000 foreign workers to get all the product. Yes, thank you, Mr. Saint-Denis. Unfortunately, we're out of time. We will go. Maybe somebody else will give you another opportunity. Thank you, Madame Roux. Madame Bissette, go ahead, please. 6 minutes. Thank you, Mr. Chair. I will share my time with my dear friend, Mr. Blois. My first question, Mr. Ghislain Gervais, president of the cooperative group, spoke about several opportunities provided by technologies. We're studying BRM programs. My questions are for the Quebec Produce Growers Association. How is technology helping manage risk in produce growers' businesses? Do they allow you to prevent losses? If I can give you an answer, there's smaller farms, bigger farms. There's a lot of small farms, and information technology is not as accessible for smaller farmers than they are for bigger businesses. When you talk about risk management, there are means in place. If you talk about agriculture in the fields, there are people walking around, writing down reports. Technology could help. You could have drones that fly over fields. But to have access to technology, you need to be of a minimal size as a business to be able to first buy it, and secondly, to be able to use them, the capacity to have the trained staff to use those technologies. What matters for us, if we look at how we depend on labor force, technology could come and replace people when the work is repetitive and done by a human being at the farm. So if we want to depend less on human labor, mechanizing repetitive tasks or irrigation or picking up what doesn't need to grow. We could do research to see what is available, how it could be adapted to various productions. We have 120 different produce types. So machines don't work for everything compared to monoculture. We're very diversified. So that's a challenge. There needs to be investments and research to automate everything. There would be places where we could invest in the future to depend less on human labor, human workers, and more on technologies. Perfect. That answers my second question also. The next question I would like to see with you, the program Agri-Invest. We've talked about it a lot, but what works in Agri-Invest for farmers, for producers, and what should be improved? Well, Agri-Invest currently has a cap. There's a cap at 1% of eligible sales. And when you look at the government contribution, it's a maximum of $10,000, which is a minimal amount. When you look at one of the improvements that would be possible, it would be on removing the cap or increasing the eligible margins so that it would be more appropriate to the farm. So Agri-Invest is there to help with smaller risks, but also to develop a business and help it invest in equipment. It's not with a 10,000 capped contribution that this program will help. Producers will be using other programs. They will invest by themselves. Those are private funds and not government funds. There's a program in Quebec that was created to fill the shortfall in 2013, where you could have an investment with no limits in the cap. So that was better for businesses, that allowed them to invest and research to have their businesses move forward. Thank you very much. Mr. Blois.
Thank you, Ms. Bissette. Thank you, Mr. Chair. My questions are to the Canadian Cattlemen's Association. You mentioned the Western Price Index, and you've made it clear that you want to extend this program into the Maritimes. We know that would be beneficial for many beef farmers. You were proposing a pilot to start. Do you have an idea what the cost would be to be able to extend this coverage in?
Brady, I'll let you take that one.
Yeah, sounds good. Thanks for that question. And no, certainly that is our objective, is to get a pilot established in Maritime Canada, using a unique index that's reflective of Eastern Canadian pricing. We're actually working on an industry-funded project right now that's going to develop that specific index, and that work's going on with price collection data and looking at the costs of upgrading, certain databases for a particular administrator. So some of that information we're actually working on right now to establish what the overall cost would be. We've done some estimating around what potential liabilities would be for provincial governments and federal governments with deficit financing and backstopping. Similar, or I guess run off of what if maritime producers were to go off of the current Western indexes right now, and that was a very rough estimate of around having about $5 million of potential liability for different participation levels from producers in Maritime Canada. But a number of these agreements that are in place between the federal government and the Western provinces that participate in the program right now do have all of that information, and we're actually looking to work with them.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Saditsky. Thank you, Mr. Blois. And maintenant, Monsieur Perron, pour 6 minutes. Allez-y.
6 minutes, go ahead. I will share my time with Madame Desbiens. I would go to the produce growers. Mr. Saint-Denis, in your presentation, you gave a list of recommendations. We talked about agri-stability. That's unanimous for all of our witnesses. Agri-invest, increasing government funds, remove the cap. Did you have any other recommendations that you didn't have enough time earlier to talk about? Thank you, Mr. Perron, for opening the door. Mr. Saint-Denis is very far from his microphone. Would it be possible to ask him to get closer? The interpreter cannot hear. we know. Mr. Saint-Denis, you need to bring your microphone closer.
Au niveau d'Agri-Relance, donc, des programmes doivent venir en premier.
With respect to Agri-Relance, that should Agri-Recovery, that should come from the provinces to begin with. It's up to the provinces. And at the federal level after that, for approval, there is, how can I say, there are different interpretations, but they don't respond to the request depending on where the request comes from. Now, for fruit and vegetable growers that don't have any insurance, any crop insurance, particularly those in greenhouses, if they don't have that crop insurance, they have issues, increased issues with respect to risk. So alignment within the provinces as well. Mr. Terreau talked about the normal losses earlier on that happen and the coverage that we have in Quebec that does not exist elsewhere in Canada. This crop insurance is very important. It should be broadened. So this alignment and harmonization amongst the provinces. And also to improve the producers, to improve the situation for producers that have time-limited products. For example, a safety net for those instances. You know, there are people that make investments to reduce their risk, yes, but they aren't really well covered under an insurance program, whether it is a crop insurance program or another type of protection. We have climate change that is existing at the present time. I think it would be a good thing to encourage people to seek to protect themselves against climate change. With respect to that, Mr. Saint-Denis, don't you think it would be time to provide some support upstream rather than downstream? For example, the type of initiative that we've been discussing, the protection of the shorelines and so on, not necessarily waiting until there is loss before you address an insurance program. We do have an action plan with our provincial government, but when you talk about research investment, when you talk about incentives for innovation, and technology, when you talk about climate change, these are all elements that particularly are difficult areas for fruit and vegetable growers, for Canadian agriculture in general as well. All productions, all crops aren't hit in the same way, but it's not an across-the-board type of result. But I think that for fruit and vegetables, if we could look to upstream rather than looking downstream. Madame Desbiens, you do have the floor. Yes, thank you to my colleague. Thank you to my colleagues and to the witnesses. It's very interesting. Mr. Saint-Denis, I'm going to try to go over this quite quickly. In my riding, Ile d'Orléans, we have a lot of small producers. Could there be some programs that are better adapted to the small and middle-sized businesses that I have, for example, in my riding? Yes, there are programs that should be created. What we have now is a one-size-fits-all type of program, and the parameters for the demand and for funding are such that many small and medium-sized businesses aren't able to access what already exists. We have cases where apple producers, for example, might invest in technology, and then you have a small orchard where there is absolutely no program to help them out if you're just a small orchard. So you need to have to look to programs that should be put in place that would allow small and medium-sized businesses to be covered. It's to be eligible. Small and medium-sized businesses don't necessarily enjoy the same coverage. When you have producers, they want to be able to manage their own production, but in the context of saving the environment, I think a lot of small producers have to insist that they want to produce locally rather than to have their product transported over many, many miles. Yes, you and I agree completely on this. Well, thank you so much, Madame Desbiens. Now, Mr. Saint-Denis, I'm sure that the strawberries are out at Ile d'Orléans, and they are the best in the world.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you to our witnesses. I'd like to start with the Canadian Cattlemen's Association for my first question. I wanted to know, you've detailed the troubles that, of course, COVID-19 has brought about for your sector, the rolling backlog of livestock that exists because our meat processing plants were shut down and then operating at a reduced capacity. And so there is that backup in our feedlots, and of course, it's going to crash into the cow-calf season coming up later this year. I wanted to just drill down specifically on Agri-Recovery because that's the program that has had some money funneled through it to help you deal with the pandemic. But I want to know, because I think the phrase "a drop in the bucket" was mentioned about, whether this program is going to be able to help you over the long term. So, how much more is going to be needed, and is Agri-Recovery over the next year going to live up to its name and actually help producers recover from this massive shock to the system?
Well, I won't comment on the technical part of that, like the actual numbers. I'll let Brady do that. But I think when you consider the backlog and the losses being taken at feedlots right now, I drop in the bucket probably isn't the most professional term to use, but as was mentioned earlier today, Agri-Recovery has the word recovery in it, and it is going to help. Don't get me wrong; it'll be a welcome assistance. But as for making producers whole, and that I'm not sure it can come close. So Brady, if you want to throw some numbers at this, probably help out.
Yeah, thanks, Charlie, and thanks for the question. I actually will talk a little bit in terms of recovering about some of the other BRM programs that we've highlighted, and for the two sectors that you mentioned, and coming back to our recommendations. I think with some of the losses that we've seen in the feeding industry due to all of this, the recommendation around payment caps and the need to kind of have that be better reflected of the size of the industry is quite important, with 3 million being a number that was, used and set in place many, iterations of the program ago. I think that's something that needs to be, really looked at going forward in terms of, increasing that cap, especially on the, for larger feeders, in that range of, 20,000, 25,000 head and above. And then, as you say, filtering down to the cow-calf sector and agri-stability, this is really where the reference margin limit, plays a huge role in putting those producers at a disadvantage under the program, and needing a much devastating drop in revenue before that program is really going to provide benefit for that industry, just because of their cost structure. And I know MNP talked about that a little bit earlier on in the presentation. So, as we look forward, I think those are two, along with the 85% reference margin trigger, I think these are all things that need to, be looked at very seriously within the agri-stability program.
Great. Okay, thank you for that. I'd like to turn to the Association of Produce Growers for Quebec. My sound cut out a little bit, so I'm not sure if you already answered this question to my Liberal colleague, Madame Bessette, but the federal government, you had mentioned the federal government was working with the provinces and territories to include labor shortages as an eligible risk for your sector under agri-insurance. How access to labor, of course, is a big risk for your sector. definitely this year we've seen, but this is definitely a reoccurring problem we've seen for individual producers to secure the labor pool that they need in order to get the produce to market, to get it harvested. Could you maybe just talk a little bit about like how such a program would work, the basic mechanics of it?
Well, thank you for the question and the opportunity, because Mrs. Bibeau made a clear call to the provinces that she would recommend adapting the agri-insurance programs for the lack of manpower due to the COVID-19 situation. However, no provinces as of now have answered to that and has adjusted the program for that. We have situations where shortage of labor will happen, and we saw in the asparagus season, for instance, in a lot of areas where the fields had to be completely forgotten and all complete loss because of lack of power for harvesting. We see that in strawberries right now, where with the heat temperature that we have, the fruits are ready very fast, and we don't have the manpower to harvest them all, so there are losses there. And this will happen throughout the season. And so if there was an adjustment to the agri-insurance program covering the lack of manpower for taking care of the crops or harvesting the crops, that would be very happy. That would be a good thing to do. However, with discussions with our province agriculture minister, they rely on the agri-stability program because they say that the labor is not something that's in a risk insurable right now through the crop insurance program, and they don't want to touch the crop insurance program, but like to seek solutions through the agri-stability. So this is right, because if there's a lack, agri-stability will catch it. If there's no lack, agri-stability won't need to pay. But on the other end, for a year or season like this year, I think it's a very good idea to have the labor as a insurable risk for agri-protection.
Thank you, Mr. Saint-Denis, and thank you, Mr. McGregor. And unfortunately, that's all the time we have for this panel. I want to thank the Canadian Cattlemen Association, Mr. Stadnicki, and also Mr. Christie, Quebec Produce Grower Association, Monsieur Thérault, and Monsieur Saint-Denis. And as an individual, Mr. Justin Jenner, beef and grain producer, thank you all for taking part in our study. And we shall say goodbye to you all, and we'll just stay on. Our members, MPs, we need to just look at our letter, make sure that it's ready to go. So I'll ask you to stay on, and we'll continue with the approval of the letter, the draft letter version 3 that we have. So you've all received a copy of it from our analyst, made some corrections and some modifications, and so I'll just leave it to the floor if there's any further comments, or is that the final version that we want to send to the Minister Bibeau? So I'll open it to the floor. Anyone has any comments on it? So I see Monsieur Perron and Monsieur Barlow. Go, Monsieur Perron.
Oui.
Yes, indeed. We have received the letter. Mr. Barlow as well seems to specify that the changes should have been submitted before yesterday morning. I'm very happy with the final version. I can go with it. Thank you, Mr. Perron.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. Yeah, we have no. I have no other additions to the letter. I just want to make sure to the clerk that the letter is going to be up on the committee's website after it is as part of the process being sent to the minister.
Monsieur Greffier, is that the case? We can put that on our website, or analyst, whoever wants to answer that. Vous êtes sourdine.
You're muted.
Chair, yes, absolutely. If it's the will of the committee, we're going to post the letter shortly after it's sent to the Minister of Agriculture, right on the committee's website.
Okay. And I don't see any other hand raised. So, Mr. McGregor, go ahead.
Yeah, just wanted to signal it's fine with me as well.
Thank you, Mr. McGregor. Monsieur Drouin?
I just wanted to say that the letter is just fine, and I want to wish a happy Saint Jean-Baptiste to all my colleagues here. Have a happy Canada Day as well for all colleagues, because I guess we won't see each other before then.
That gives a rubber stamp to an okay to the letter.
Monsieur le Président.
Oui, allez-y, Monsieur Leroux.
Mr. Speaker. Go ahead, please. I'd just like to have a date. I'm happy with the letter, but I'd just like to have a date. When is it going to be sent to the minister? How long is it going to take? Do you have a time frame for the... Yes, I could have an answer for Mr. Giroux. I'm going to send it on this Thursday, the 25th of June. Thank you. And at the same time, the copy will be sent to the different provincial ministers. Absolutely. Thank you.
Thank you very much, everyone.
The committee, I think we've done some great work. We've had some great questions, great witness, and we've worked very well together. I really appreciate it. I think you guys are a great team, and I think we moved this issue to the forefront. And I really appreciate all your hard work. And on that, quoting Francis, Bonne Saint Jean-Baptiste, nos amis québécois, and also we shall see you on the 8th of July, and take care. Enjoy some of the summer. Take care for yourself also, and we'll see you on the 8th. Okay, thank you, everyone.
Au revoir. Au revoir.
Merci tout le monde.
Merci.
Bonjour.